Custody battles can get very complicated, especially if they are between a parent and grandparents. In an instance when a mother dies, grandparents tend to seek custody of their grandchildren, which can lead to the alienation of the father. And while the adults go back and forth, children are often left traumatized and sadly neglected. Tshepo Mojapelo, director at Mojapelo Attorneys, joins us now to talk about the interests of children in custody battles. Tshepo, good morning and welcome to Newzroom Afrika.
Good morning, Masechaba. Thank you so much for having me. Happy Women's Day. Well, from yesterday, but also good morning to all your listeners.
Well, happy Women's Month.
Yes.
Tshepo, first and foremost, what are the most common challenges that can arise in custody battles when one parent passes away?
It's always the succession plan that was not put in place, right? So it's very easy to deal with custody battles. And it's not really a custody battle where the parents are married, because by virtue of the marriage, the father and the mother automatically have the full parental rights and responsibilities in terms of that child. Now it's different where the mother and the father are unmarried and perhaps they don't even live together. Now that gives us a situation where when the one parent passes away, being the mother, for example, what then happens to the child? And obviously, because we follow a system where the best interest of the child of paramount importance in all their issues, we then have to deal with who is the better placed guardian over the parents. Now, it differs really in different situations where a mother or the father doesn't live with the child and maybe doesn't offer support or maintenance or whatever care that that child must actually get. It's different there because then that father has to apply to a court to be recognized, one, as the biological father, but also to be given those full parental rights and responsibilities that would ordinarily be given automatically to a father of a child that was married to the mother at the time of the child's birth, or even at the time of the child's or the mother's life, you know? So it really does differ, and the different scenarios play out in those gray areas that we find.
It's interesting, speaking of those gray areas, how in general the world seems to interpret parental rights as that of leaning towards the parent, when in actual fact it is not the parent's right to have access to the child, it is the child's right to have access to the parent. So I want to know from you, how can the court balance the rights of the remaining parent with the needs and well-being of the child?
So it's always in the best interest of any child to have a relationship with both their parents, right? And the relationship, unfortunately, is specifically for children that are younger, is basically or only the responsibility of the parent to create that relationship. Now, in the gray areas that we see, it's always a situation where maybe the father was absent and maybe he comes back to say that I want to now have a relationship with the child. And because of some of the strained relationships with the mother, that is not possible. But how the courts manage this is that it's always in the best interest of the child to have access to both their parents and both their parents' families, maternal and paternal. Now, the courts balance this by saying, if one parent has been absent and then comes back, how do we integrate this child into the family of the parent that is now active or now wanting to have care and contact with that child? And in most cases, it's always an integration that happens with the child, the family that they have been staying with, for instance, and the integration into the family that now wants to have access, contact, and care with that child. That's how the courts do it. So it's always that integration. It's never done haphazardly, or it's never done immediately, for obviously certain reasons to say this child might not know the other family, might not know the father, might not know the mother, or even the extended families. So you don't want to create a situation where you traumatize the child by taking them away from a place that they know and are used to, a home that they deem to be a home, and then putting them into another place where they don't know anyone, they don't relate with anyone. So it's always that integration that happens from the one family to the other family via means of visitation. So it will start with those visitation where maybe the one parent comes to the house to see the child, and as the child grows older, then they'll have the right to take the child from this home and then take them to their home, sometimes for a day, and then we'll integrate it obviously into overnight visits with the other family. So it really does happen like that over time. That's how the courts manage that.
What are other potential long-term effects of a child being at the center of a contentious court battle, essentially?
The ones that we see really, Masechaba, in practice is that, the mommy and daddy issues that come up, it's always that. And the most telling way that we see the short-term effects, always at school. So the child will see that the child will stop performing at their prime at school. And in those instances, you'd find that maybe the child will need to be taken out of that situation at home or put into another place via grandparents, whoever it is, or even social workers get involved in that. But really, the short term, you see it at school, it affects their work very much. But in the long term, it's more of the child growing up to choose sides, whether they like mom or they like dad or they don't like this family. So it's quite, the effects though, I can't speak too much to them, but what we do see in our practice is just those small and big, actually, differences that happen with the children when they're young and as they're growing up.
What about the very common situation, especially when it comes to fathers? Because we know that mothers, generally speaking, are the primary caregivers. What about situations where the fathers stay away for financial inadequacy reasons? What does the court then say in that regard? Because we know that children are not raised by money, but they're raised by love.
That is true. That is true. There can be no person or no father that is prohibited from having contact and care with a child because they are unemployed or because they cannot contribute financially to the well-being of the child. That is very correct. The courts look at all of those. They look at the financial well-being. They look at the holistic well-being, the mental well-being, how this child is going to develop with certain, like I said, mommy or dad issues, So the courts really do look at that. And there has been, and perhaps maybe we need to educate more men about this, is that you don't need to be prohibited from caring for your child in other means. Even if you're not working or you're not employed, you don't have the financial means to contribute that. The children's court is very specific in this instance. Anyone can approach the children's court for this, and the children's court will set out a parenting plan or a contact, it's basically a contact agreement with the mother of the child and you to see how do you integrate this family together for that exact contact. So the courts do look at that, and they will not stop or they will not prohibit a father from seeing a child, even if he does not have the financial means to contribute financially to the well-being of that child.
Thank you for that, Tshepo, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
I can only hope that one parent who needed to see this actually watched this conversation. That was Tshepo Mojapelo, director at Mojapelo Attorneys Incorporated.